Detective Marcus Hayes had seen his fair share of bizarre cases in his 15 years on the force. From petty thefts to high-profile homicides, he thought he had encountered it all. But nothing could have prepared him for the day he became the protagonist in his own twisted tale. It was a crisp autumn morning when Marcus finally managed to acquire a rare, antique pocket watch he had been eyeing for months. The watch, a family heirloom from the early 1800s, had been passed down through generations of a prominent local family. Marcus, a history buff and collector of rare artifacts, had won it at an auction after weeks of intense bidding. The watch was not just a piece of history. It was a symbol of craftsmanship and elegance from a bygone era. After securing the watch, Marcus carefully placed it in the glove compartment of his car, a modest but reliable Toyota Camry. He decided to make a quick stop at the local hardware store to pick up some supplies for a home renovation project. Little did he know, this routine errand would soon spiral into a chaotic ordeal. As Marcus approached his car in the store parking lot, he noticed a woman in her late 40s, with fiery red hair and a designer handbag, lingering suspiciously near his vehicle. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, but her demeanor was anything but professional. She was fiddling with the door handle, her eyes darting around as if checking for witnesses. Marcus, ever the observant detective, felt a surge of adrenaline. His instincts kicked in, and he approached her cautiously. "Can I help you with something?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. The woman, who later identified herself as Victoria Kensington, jumped back, startled. "Oh, I was just admiring your car," she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "It's such a classic model. You don't see many of these on the road anymore." Marcus wasn't buying it. His eyes quickly scanned the scene, and he noticed a small, metallic tool glinting on the ground near her feet, a lock-picking device. "Really? Because it looks like you were trying to break into my car," he retorted, his tone hardening. Victoria's face twisted into a sneer. "Don't be ridiculous. Why would I want anything from your car? It's not like you have anything valuable in there." The implication was clear. Marcus, a tall, broad-shouldered African-American man, was being judged by the color of his skin. The casual racism and blatant entitlement in her tone set him off. "Oh, I don't know," he shot back, stepping closer. "Maybe the antique pocket watch I just bought and placed in there not even 10 minutes ago." Victoria's eyes widened for a split second, but she quickly recovered. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're harassing me." "I feel threatened," she exclaimed, pulling out her phone. Her thumb hovered over the 911 icon. "I'm calling the police. This man is threatening me." Marcus couldn't believe what was happening. He was a seasoned detective, a man who had dedicated his life to upholding the law, and now he was about to be on the receiving end of a false accusation. He knew the script all too well. The false claims, the crocodile tears, the whole performance designed to weaponize the police against him. As Victoria dialed 911, Marcus took a step back, raising his hands in a non-threatening manner. He knew he had to remain calm, even though every fiber of his being wanted to scream. He pulled out his own phone and called his partner, Detective Sarah Reynolds. "Sarah, I'm at the hardware store on Maple Street. I need you and the team down here ASAP. I've got a Victoria situation. I think it might be connected to the antique theft ring we've been tracking," Marcus explained, keeping his voice steady. Sarah, who had worked with Marcus for years, knew exactly what he meant. "We're on our way, Marcus. Don't do anything stupid," she said, her voice grim. "I wouldn't dream of it," Marcus replied, ending the call. As Marcus leaned against his car, watching Victoria pace back and forth while talking to the 911 operator, he couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. He had seen this kind of behavior before, entitled individuals who thought they could manipulate the system to their advantage. But this time, the tables were about to turn. The minutes crawled by, and other shoppers began to notice the commotion. They cast curious glances at Marcus and Victoria, their faces a mix of confusion and judgment. Marcus could feel their assumptions. What they were seeing was a black man arguing with a white woman, a narrative as old as time, and one that rarely ended well for the black man. Finally, the flashing lights of two patrol cars appeared in the distance. The officers, a young man and a woman, approached cautiously, their hands resting on their holsters. "Sir, can you tell us what's going on here?" the male officer asked, his voice neutral. Marcus took a deep breath. "Officers, I am Detective Marcus Hayes, badge number 583. I called for backup because this woman was attempting to break into my car, he said, showing them his badge. The female officer's eyes widened in recognition. Detective Hayes, we weren't expecting you to be involved in this, she said, turning to Victoria. Ma'am, please step away from the detective. We need to get your statement, but we also need to hear his side of the story. Victoria sputtered, indignant. But he's lying. He's the one who attacked me. Marcus shook his head. Check my glove compartment, officers. You'll find an antique pocket watch. Ask her why she was trying to steal it. As one officer took Victoria aside to get her statement, or rather, her continued lies, the other approached Marcus's car and examined the glove compartment. He saw the lock-picking tool on the ground and immediately radioed for forensic support. Meanwhile, Marcus's partner, Sarah, and the rest of the team arrived on the scene. Sarah gave Marcus a knowing look. Having a bit of trouble there, detective? She asked, a slight grin on her face. Just a minor misunderstanding, Marcus replied dryly. Although, I think this misunderstanding might be connected to our ongoing investigation. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? And how's that? Marcus gestured toward Victoria, who was still ranting and raving to the other officer. Take a look at her car, Sarah. I have a feeling you'll find something interesting. Sarah nodded and signaled to two of the other detectives, who approached Victoria's car, a sleek, late-model Mercedes SUV. At first glance, it looked like any other luxury vehicle, but Sarah and her team were experts at spotting the telltale signs of criminal activity. They noticed scratches around the door locks, suggesting forced entry. They ran the plates and discovered that the car was registered to Victoria's husband, a seemingly unassuming real estate agent. After getting the okay from the senior officer on the scene, they popped the trunk. What they found was nothing short of astonishing. Stacked neatly in the trunk were several boxes, all containing rare and valuable antiques. There were vintage jewelry pieces, ancient coins, and even a few priceless paintings. It was like a mobile antique store, except everything was clearly stolen. Sarah whistled softly. Well, she said, her eyes gleaming. Looks like our Victoria has a little side hustle. She called Marcus over. Take a look at this, Marcus. Does any of this look familiar? Marcus examined the boxes. They were all high-value items, the kind that had been reported stolen in the recent string of antique thefts they had been investigating. He even recognized one of the paintings as belonging to a local museum that had filed a report just last week. Yeah, Sarah, Marcus said, his voice steady. This is definitely connected. This is her. This is the one we've been looking for. The evidence against Victoria was overwhelming. It was clear that she wasn't just a random thief trying to steal Marcus's pocket watch. She was part of a larger, well-organized theft ring that had been plaguing the city for months. Thanks to her own racism and entitlement, she had been caught red-handed. The look on Victoria's face when she saw Sarah and the other detectives swarming her car was priceless. The smugness evaporated, replaced by a look of pure panic. She knew she was caught. As the officers began to handcuff her, Victoria's demeanor completely changed. The confident, entitled woman who had been so quick to call 911 and make false accusations was now a quivering mess. She started backpedaling, desperately trying to explain away the stolen goods. I don't know how those got there, she stammered, her voice shaking. Someone must have planted them. I'm being framed. The officers, however, were not buying it. They had seen this act before, the desperate attempts to deny the overwhelming evidence. Sarah approached her, her expression stern. Ma'am, you are under arrest for grand larceny, possession of stolen property, and filing a false police report. You have the right to remain silent. As Sarah read her rights, Victoria began to sob uncontrollably. No, this can't be happening. I'm a good person. I didn't do anything, she cried, her voice breaking. It was a pathetic display, a last-ditch effort to manipulate the situation, but it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming, and her credibility was shot. She was handcuffed and placed in the back of a patrol car, her face buried in her hands. As she was being led away, she glared at Marcus, her eyes filled with hatred. This is all your fault, she screamed. You ruined my life. Marcus just shook his head. She had ruined her own life with her actions, her racism, and her criminal behavior. He was simply the one who caught her. Back at the scene, The forensics team continued to process Victoria's car. They found more evidence linking her to other thefts, including receipts for items she had sold online and a detailed ledger of her criminal activities. It turned out that Victoria had been running this operation for years, preying on unsuspecting collectors and museums across the city. As the sun began to set, the scene at the hardware store slowly began to clear. Victoria's car was towed away, and the evidence was cataloged and secured. The officers thanked Marcus for his assistance and assured him that they would keep him updated on the case. Sarah clapped Marcus on the shoulder. "Good work, Marcus," she said. "You not only caught a thief, but you also helped us crack a major case. I owe you one." Marcus smiled. "Just doing my job, Sarah. Just doing my job." Although Marcus was happy that they had finally caught Victoria and shut down her operation, he couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness. It was sad that someone would stoop so low, driven by greed and prejudice, to commit such crimes. And it was especially sad that she had tried to use her privilege to weaponize the police against him, a black man who was simply trying to protect his property. The aftermath of the incident was a whirlwind. The local news picked up the story, and it quickly went viral. The headline screamed, entitled "Socialite Calls 911 After Being Caught Stealing Antique Watch, Ends Up Arrested for Running Major Theft Ring." The internet exploded with outrage. People shared the story on social media, commenting and expressing their disgust at Victoria's behavior. The video of her being arrested, her face contorted with rage and denial, was shared thousands of times. She became the poster child for entitlement and prejudice, a cautionary tale of what happens when you let your privilege go to your head. Of course, there were also the trolls and the naysayers, the ones who tried to defend Victoria or downplay her actions. They claimed she was being unfairly targeted, that the story was being exaggerated, or that Marcus was somehow responsible for her downfall. But they were quickly drowned out by the overwhelming chorus of condemnation. The online backlash was so intense that Victoria's husband, the unsuspecting real estate agent, was forced to go into hiding. He claimed he had no idea about his wife's criminal activities and was completely blindsided by the revelations. Whether that was true or not, Marcus couldn't say, but he felt bad for him nonetheless. He was an innocent bystander, caught in the crossfire of his wife's actions. As for Victoria, she was facing some serious charges. Grand larceny, possession of stolen property, filing a false police report, and obstruction of justice were just the beginning. As the investigation continued, they uncovered evidence that she had been selling stolen goods online for years, raking in a significant amount of money. That led to additional charges of tax evasion and money laundering. Victoria was looking at a lengthy prison sentence, possibly decades, depending on how the case played out. Her attempt to manipulate the situation had not only failed spectacularly, but it had also landed her in a world of trouble. The district attorney was determined to make an example of her, to send a message that this kind of behavior would not be tolerated. Marcus even had to put in an official statement to show that he was in no way helping or tampering with the investigation and would act as an unbiased source of information to help with her case. The cherry on top of this whole situation was the impact on the organized theft ring. With Victoria's arrest, they got a huge lead in tracking down her connections and other members of the ring. The operation was dismantled, and the city saw a significant drop in antique thefts. In the end, Victoria was found guilty on all charges. She received a hefty prison sentence, 15 years minimum, with the possibility of parole after 10. It was a just outcome, Marcus thought. She had caused so much harm to so many people, and she deserved to pay the price for her crimes. The case had a lasting impact on the community. It sparked conversations about race, privilege, and the importance of accountability. It served as a reminder that no one is above the law and that even the most entitled individuals can be brought to justice. As for Marcus, he went back to his job, solving cases and protecting the city. But he never forgot the day he caught Victoria Kensington trying to steal his antique pocket watch. It was a bizarre and frustrating experience, but it also reinforced his belief in the power of justice and the importance of standing up for what is right. He also learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate the power of a good detective and a well-placed security camera. Oh, and he finally got to admire his antique pocket watch in peace. It was everything he had hoped it would be, a beautiful piece of history, a reminder of the craftsmanship of a bygone era. Every time he looked at it, he couldn't help but smile, knowing that somewhere behind bars, Victoria was regretting the day she decided to mess with the wrong detective. As the dust settled from Victoria Kensington's arrest, Detective Marcus Hayes and his team delved deeper into the intricate web of the antique theft ring. The evidence found in Victoria's car was just the tip of the iceberg. The ledger discovered in her possession contained names, dates, and locations that pointed to a much larger operation than they had initially anticipated. Marcus and Sarah Reynolds spent countless hours poring over the ledger, cross-referencing it with recent theft reports and unsolved cases. It became clear that Victoria was not acting alone. She was part of a sophisticated network that spanned multiple states, with connections to high-end auction houses, private collectors, and even some corrupt museum curators. One name kept popping up in the ledger: Elias Blackwood, a wealthy art dealer with a reputation for dealing in rare and exotic artifacts. Blackwood was known for his lavish parties and his extensive collection of antiques, but there had always been whispers about the legitimacy of his acquisitions. Marcus had a hunch that Blackwood was the mastermind behind the entire operation. Marcus and Sarah decided to put Blackwood under surveillance. They spent weeks monitoring his movements, tracking his transactions, and gathering evidence. Blackwood was careful, but not careful enough. He had a habit of meeting with shady characters in secluded locations, and his financial records showed a pattern of large, unexplained deposits. One evening, Marcus and Sarah followed Blackwood to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. They watched as he met with a group of men who were unloading crates from a truck. Using a high-powered camera, they captured images of the crates being opened, revealing stolen antiques and artifacts. "This is it," Marcus whispered to Sarah. "This is where they're storing the stolen goods before shipping them out." Sarah nodded. "We need to move fast. If we can catch them in the act, we can shut down the entire operation." The next day, Marcus and Sarah obtained a warrant to raid the warehouse. They assembled a team of officers and prepared for a coordinated strike. As they approached the warehouse, Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline. This was the moment they had been working towards. The raid was executed with precision. The team breached the warehouse, catching Blackwood and his associates off guard. The men tried to flee, but they were quickly apprehended. Inside the warehouse, they found a treasure trove of stolen antiques, including paintings, sculptures, and rare manuscripts. Blackwood, however, was not one to go down without a fight. As the officers moved in, he pulled out a gun and took a hostage, a young woman who had been working as a cleaner in the warehouse. He pressed the gun to her head and demanded safe passage. "Let her go, Blackwood," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. "This is over. You're not going anywhere." Blackwood's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape route. "You think you can stop me?" he sneered. "I have connections, Hayes. Powerful people who won't let this stand." Marcus took a step closer, his eyes locked on Blackwood. "Your connections can't help you now. Let her go, and we can talk." For a moment, it seemed like Blackwood might comply. But then, in a sudden burst of desperation, he shoved the woman aside and fired a shot at Marcus. The bullet grazed Marcus's shoulder, but he didn't flinch. He tackled Blackwood to the ground, disarming him in one swift motion. The warehouse erupted into chaos as the officers moved in to secure the scene. Blackwood was handcuffed and taken into custody, his face a mask of rage and defeat. The raid on the warehouse was a major victory for Marcus and his team. They had not only captured Blackwood, but also recovered millions of dollars worth of stolen antiques. The media hailed it as one of the biggest busts in the city's history, and Marcus was once again in the spotlight. But the case was far from over. Blackwood's arrest opened up a Pandora's box of corruption and deceit. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a network of high-profile individuals who had been complicit in the theft ring. Auction houses, museum curators, and even some politicians were implicated in the scandal. Marcus and Sarah worked tirelessly to bring all the culprits to justice. It was a long and arduous process, but they were determined to see it through. The case became a symbol of the fight against corruption and the importance of holding those in power accountable. The trial of Elias Blackwood was a media sensation. The courtroom was packed with reporters, spectators, and even some of the victims whose stolen antiques had been recovered. Marcus and Sarah were called to testify, and their testimony was crucial in securing a conviction. Blackwood's defense team tried every trick in the book to discredit the evidence and paint their client as a victim of circumstance. But the mountain of evidence against him was insurmountable. The ledger, the surveillance footage, and the testimony of his associates all pointed to his guilt. In the end, the jury found Blackwood guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. The judge praised Marcus and Sarah for their dedication and perseverance, calling them true heroes of justice. The case had a profound impact on Marcus. It reinforced his belief in the power of justice and the importance of standing up for what is right. But it also took a toll on him. The long hours, the constant pressure, and the emotional weight of the case left him exhausted. Sarah noticed the change in Marcus and urged him to take some time off. "You've done more than enough, Marcus," she said. "It's time to take care of yourself." Marcus took her advice and decided to take a break from the force. He spent time with his family, traveled, and even took up a new hobby, woodworking. It was a far cry from the high-stakes world of detective work, but it gave him a sense of peace and fulfillment. After a year-long sabbatical, Marcus returned to the force, rejuvenated and ready to take on new challenges. He was promoted to the rank of captain, and he used his new position to mentor young detectives and advocate for reforms within the department. The case of the stolen heirloom became a cornerstone of his career, a reminder of the impact one person can have in the fight for justice. Marcus often shared the story with new recruits, using it as a lesson in perseverance, integrity, and the importance of never giving up. Years later, Marcus received a letter from Victoria Kensington. She had been serving her sentence in a minimum security prison and was up for parole. In the letter, she expressed remorse for her actions and thanked Marcus for opening her eyes to the consequences of her behavior. "I was blinded by greed and entitlement," she wrote. "But you showed me that there is a better way. I hope to make amends and contribute to society in a positive way." Marcus was moved by the letter. He had always believed in the possibility of redemption, and he was glad to see that Victoria was on the path to turning her life around. The story of the stolen heirloom became a legend in the city, a tale of justice, perseverance, and the triumph of good over evil. Marcus Hayes became a symbol of hope and integrity, a reminder that one person can make a difference. As for the antique pocket watch, it remained one of Marcus's most prized possessions. Every time he looked at it, he was reminded of the journey that had brought him to where he was today. It was more than just a piece of history. It was a symbol of the power of justice and the importance of standing up for what is right. And so, the story of the stolen heirloom came to an end, but its legacy lived on, inspiring future generations to fight for justice and never give up, no matter the odds. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story on Store of Good Stories. If this story touched your heart or made you think, don't forget to hit like and share the video to spread this positive message to more people. And if this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of the meaningful stories we share every week. Your support is the biggest motivation for Store of Good Stories to keep bringing heartfelt and valuable stories to you. See you in the next video.